July 1855. Edwin Forrest was taking a walk in Philadelphia. He started out from the brownstone at 144 North 10th Street, the house he had bought for his mother and sisters back in the 1820s. His mother had died in 1847, but his three sisters, Henrietta, Eleonora, and Carolyn, still made it their home. They always kept a room prepared for Edwin, and he usually stayed there whenever he returned to his native city. This morning, he purposefully made his way to Broad Street and then started walking north. As Forrest crossed Vine Street, he must have thought, this was no longer the city limits, as it had been all his life. Philadelphia had consolidated with all its neighboring boroughs in 1854, and now the entirety of Philadelphia County was one huge municipality with one city council, one police force, and one mayor. In fact, Robert T. Conrad, the author of the play Jack Cade, one of the best plays in his repertoire, had been elected to the office of mayor and now was administering the huge metropolis. The population of the city, which had barely topped 100,000 at the beginning of the decade of the 1850s, would surpass 500,000 by 1860 and then keep growing. Broad Street, which for 150 years had only been the notional center of the city's north-south axis, was finally becoming lined with major buildings. In fact, the groundbreaking ceremony for the grand new Academy of Music at Locust and South Broad had just occurred in June 1855. But it was up North Broad where Forrest strode that day in July, wearing his customary plain coat and loosely knotted tie. He passed quickly by the coal and lumber yards along the railroad lines that cross Broad Street above Center Square. Beyond Poplar Street, however, North Broad was showing signs of becoming what it would be in the decades to come, the favorite street of Philadelphia's nouveau riche elite, the factory owners, the brewmeisters, the surging mercantile class. This wide thoroughfare was abuzz already with building projects, churches, banks, and huge houses. Forrest had made many real estate investments in the city over the years. Some of the lots he had purchased on speculation in what was now North Philadelphia were clearly paying off. Forrest stopped walking and paused at the corner of Broad and Master Street, suddenly struck by what he saw there. On an otherwise empty block, a large and elegant 3-story brownstone mansion was rising at the corner. He liked the look of it. He asked the workmen who it was being built for. Frederick Gall, they told him, a man who owned one of the biggest breweries in the city. By that very afternoon, Edwin Forrest marched into Gall's office at the brewery and offered him $23,000 cash for that unfinished house. Mr. Gall accepted, and the deal was done. Forrest only had one stipulation. The property deed for the mansion was to be registered in the name of his 3 sisters, not his. You see, he didn't want his ex-wife's lawyers to be able to make a claim on it. The previous 2 decades of Forrest's life had been eventful and tumultuous, to say the least. Flush with the earnings of his early years, he had traveled all over Europe from the years 1834 to 1836. He had seen Paris, Rome, Moscow, Odessa, Istanbul, and Athens. Returning to America to perform again for his adoring fans, he immediately announced he was crossing the Atlantic again to bring his new American style of acting to England. In London, he had wooed and won the affections of the 18-year-old beauty Catherine Norton Sinclair. He had married her, and he had brought her back to America. Settling his new wife in a lovely town home in New York City, Forrest plunged back into his acting career. With the proceeds from his highly successful plays, he bought real estate. Taking Catherine along with him as he went on a tour of the American West, he showed her the hillside on the south bank of the Ohio River, where as a teenager he had once sat, forlorn and poverty-stricken. but had found inspiration and a new determination to succeed. He bought that hillside, too, kept it his entire life. He bought another hillside along the Hudson River north of New York and started planning a medieval dream palace where he imagined he could settle down and wrap himself and his wife in protective luxury. But they were never to live in that castle. Over the years, their marriage faltered badly, never recovering from the dashed hopes of their 4 pregnancies. Each of Edwin and Catherine Forrest's 4 babies died shortly after their births. Not many relationships could survive such sadness and grief, and the couple inevitably drifted apart. And admittedly, Forrest didn't help with his obsession with building his own career. His tour of Great Britain in 1845 had also gone awry and had cemented the deep hatred and rivalry with the English actor William Charles Macready. This rivalry was to come to a head in 1849 as Forrest pursued Macready from city to city as the English actor conducted his own tour of American theaters. It all ended with the Astor Place riots of May 1849. Edwin and Catherine Forrest's marriage ended shortly afterwards. He accused Catherine of infidelity, and she, with much more justification, accused him of even more infidelity and overwhelmingly cruel behavior to her. She filed for divorce in 1851, and the resulting trial became a huge public sensation and a scandal. Eventually, the divorce was granted, but according to the ruling, Edwin Forrest had to pay Catherine a huge alimony, half his acquired fortune. Well, Forrest refused to pay and appealed the decision over and over again to higher and higher courts. He lost all the appeals. He sold the castle on the Hudson, he sold the townhouse in New York, and announced that he was even going to stop performing. That is why in 1855, Forrest was buying a house in Philadelphia. He was both coming home again, and he was also laying up for a legal siege. He wanted to get away from everything that reminded him of his former wife, whom he now despised. She herself actually began to go on the stage, though she had never acted before. She needed the money because Forrest was never going to pay her a dime. He swore, never, 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 never. Like every character he had ever played on the stage, he would rather die than compromise his principles. He dispatched his lawyers again and again to dispute every judgment against him. Really, there's nothing less admirable about the life of Edwin Forrest than the way he behaved in this matter. He was vindictive, controlling, and ruthlessly vengeful to the very end. But his new home on Broad and Master Street became his refuge. He planted a garden, and he stocked the library with thousands of books, which he read voraciously. He even purchased a first folio of Shakespeare, which he displayed to his friends proudly. He built an extension to the south of the house for his collection of pictures, and there was even a small theater inside, too. He did start performing publicly again in 1860, when he realized he was likely to need extra cash to pay the huge judgment against him. He found his loyal audiences would still flock to see him. Oh, he performed again and again at the huge Niblo's Garden Theater in New York, doing all of his former major roles 3 nights a week, returning home to Philadelphia every weekend. He performed in Boston, where his dearest friend, now James Oakes, a storekeeper, lived, and where Forrest would also visit a young lady friend whom he referred to only as Namioki, the name of the wife in the play Metamora. He did shows in Philadelphia, too, of course. In 1861, as the oncoming Civil War loomed over the country, Forrest offered the city several weeks of performances from his long-standing and familiar repertory of roles. Hamlet, Damon and Pythias, Richelieu, Virginius, Metamora, Jack Cade, Othello, Macbeth, and Richard III. He returned to the Academy of Music again in late 1864 with Shakespeare's Coriolanus, with a production so elaborate that the management advertised that it was seeking 100 young men as extras to fill out the Academy's large stage. Though the city was already sending thousands of its young men into real battles, this recruiting call for an on-stage army had no trouble filling the ranks, and the management easily filled the seats, too, with an audience eager for ancient military spectacle. In fact, the opening night of Coriolanus was given special help by nature herself, for as Forrest thundered away to an audience of over 3,000 people in the Academy, a true thunderstorm battered away at the building from the outside. Altogether, reported the Philadelphia Public Ledger, it was one of the most dramatically complete evenings the theater had ever seen. Earlier that same year, Edwin Forrest had commissioned the Boston artist Thomas Ball to make a larger-than-life marble sculpture of him in the role of Coriolanus. Though Coriolanus was a role he had not done often over the course of his career, with its anti-democratic rants against mob rule by the title character, it didn't really fit his persona, but now he felt it totally appealed to him. With his calipers, Ball-made measurements of Forrest's still massive calves and shoulders, though the two men did quibble a bit about the facial hair. Coriolanus lived in an era before Romans began shaving their faces, Forrest insisted, and Ball finally agreed. He took his preliminary model with its whiskers and its toga and its sandals, and he went off to Italy to select and shape the proper piece of stone for it. Meanwhile, the tours went on. Everywhere Forrest performed in these final years, fathers brought their children and their grandchildren to come and see the man who had meant so much to them in their youth. Though younger theater fans and the American intelligentsia now generally much preferred the more intellectual and sophisticated Hamlet of Edwin Booth, who was also performing pretty regularly in Philadelphia these days, Edwin Forrest retained a hold on his old fans. It was a little like the final years of a 20th century rock and roll band, still packing the seats in the arenas of the 21st century, everyone showing up, wanting to hear the old hits. But time would not stand still. One by one, Edwin Forrest's three sisters passed away in the house on Broad Street. He was left alone with only two loyal servants and the visits of friends. In his 60s, Forrest's health increasingly failed him. His huge body began to break down. Gout, sciatica, rheumatism all hobbled him and nearly paralyzed one hand. When he performed Damon in Damon and Pythias, now a youthful role, he could no longer make that final leap up onto the high platform to save his friend from execution. The stagehand set the platform lower, and then even lower, until finally it was only a few inches higher than the stage floor. When he played Lear or Cardinal Richelieu in Edward Bulwer-Lytton's play, he no longer needed to imitate the infirmities of old age. "I am Lear," he growled at a friend one day. At last, Forrest was reduced to only sitting on a chair, few audience members who had still assembled to see him read from the plays of Shakespeare. His loyal audience was deserting him. On October 15th, 1872, he played the Academy of Music in Philadelphia for the last time, reading to a sea of mostly empty chairs. He gave his final reading in Boston in early December 1872. Returning to Philadelphia, he tried to gather his strength again. But on the morning of December 12th, 1872, his maid found him stricken in his bedroom on the second floor of the huge house on Broad Street. Forrest was fully dressed, his exercise weights on the floor near him, an open copy of Hamlet on the bedside table, and an angry red streak running across the side of his head. undoubtedly the sign of a major stroke. He could not speak. By the time the doctor arrived, he was gone. But there are many reminders of Edwin Forrest's life and career still left in Philadelphia. Most notably, the Schubert Organization built the huge Forrest Theater on South Broad Street in 1906. It was demolished and replaced in the 1920s by the second Forrest Theater on Walnut Street, which still stands today and still hosts touring Broadway shows. Another Edwin Forrest Theater was built in New York, though it is now called the Eugene O'Neill Theater. But what else remains? Well, Edwin Forrest had prepared for what would happen after his death carefully. He knew how to make a final exit, after all, having at the end no wife, no living children, and no living relatives. He longed for some way to keep his name alive, at least. He arranged for an official biography to be written, which was eventually completed by the Unitarian minister William Alger, with a bit of help from his nephew, Horatio Alger, a writer who thereafter became associated with rags to riches stories such as Edwin Forrest's. Though Forrest had also contemplated making many arrangements for his accumulated money, such as establishing a drama academy, what he eventually decided on was endowing what he termed a home for decayed actors. This idea went back a long way. As early as December 1829, we can see that Forrest was involved in charitable efforts in Philadelphia to establish something called the Theatrical Fund. Remember in the last episode, we found that this era, the late 1820s, the early 1830s, was a particularly rocky one for members of the theatrical profession in Philadelphia. Actors were frequently not paid at all, when managers were forced to cater to the demands of stars and landlords first. During this period, we again see evidence of actors joining in commonwealths and actors' republics, trying to find some more equitable method of sharing box office proceeds with each other. And as usual, unfortunately, these efforts generally failed, and many actors and stagehands, too, found themselves quite destitute, especially at the end of their careers. Edwin Forrest, even as a young man, had gladly donated his services to many benefit performances to help establish the basis of the Theatrical Fund, and eventually the endowment of the organization faltered and then failed. Forrest must have seen many former company members of his own over the years fall into poverty in their final years. He knew how close his own family had come to the same fate when his father died during his childhood. He was certainly mortified when the retiring longtime comedian of the Chestnut Street Theater Company, Joseph Jefferson, had held a benefit performance to fund his retirement, and it was almost empty of paying audience members due to competition from a show of Forrest's over at the Walnut Street Theater that same night. Well, upon learning that he had been the cause of the distinguished actor's financial embarrassment, Forrest offered to make up the deficit, but the proud Jefferson had icily refused, hurt deeply by what he felt was rejection from the city where he had labored on the stage for so long. Joseph Jefferson chose to retire quietly in the countryside outside Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. When he died in 1832, there wasn't even enough money in his family for a headstone for his grave, which had to be raised by a public charitable subscription 10 years later. This and other such stories made Forrest determined to do something. During his lifetime, he often donated or did benefits for New York charities, the General Theatrical Fund of New York and the American Dramatic Fund Association. Though he had nothing but contempt for profligate or dissipated theatricals who had wasted their prime years, he had pity for the deserving actors of Philadelphia, and he wrote in his will that he wanted to, quote, smooth the pillow of the unfortunate in sickness or other disability or the decay of their declining years, close quote. In September of 1865, Edwin Forrest scoured the countryside around Philadelphia, and he finally chose Springbrook, a grand old house on a 111-acre farm 8 miles northeast of the city, which stood along the Bristol Pike. He'd known it even in his youth, and he was impressed by all the improvements it had received by subsequent owners: greenhouses, serpentine walks, and even 2 indoor bathrooms, an impressive modern convenience for the day. He bought it with a down payment of $40,000 and spent the next 7 years getting it ready, even adorning it with architectural elements he had purchased from the Second Chestnut Street Theater when it was torn down in 1855. When Forrest died in 1872, his well-laid plans were put into motion. An endowment was established. Though an unfortunate fire soon after his death in his mansion on Broad Street had destroyed some of his books and even his copy of Shakespeare's First Folio, the building was sold to an educational institution, the Philadelphia College of Art and Design for Women. With these proceeds, and with the rest of the accumulated estate, a $300,000 endowment was set up. That's several $1,000,000 in today's money. 12 elderly actors who had applied for the honor were installed at Springbrook, with all their daily needs provided for. The only requirement that Forrest stipulated was that they hold a ceremony of remembrance to Shakespeare every March 23rd on the Bard's birthday. And every 4th of July, they needed to gather for a patriotic oration and a reading of the Declaration of Independence. Forrest's entire library and many artworks decorated the walls at Springbrook. The marble statue of himself as Coriolanus was installed in the front hall. And when the residents died, well, there was a plot set aside for them at the West Laurel Hill Cemetery in Ballackinwood, just across the Schuylkill River from Philadelphia, where they would be buried in the plot designated for the guests of Edwin Forrest, underneath a granite monument with the words, "All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players." And as they made their exits, new applicants would be received into the home as long as they could prove they had spent at least 10 to 12 years in the theatrical profession. This arrangement for the Edwin Forrest home lasted into the 1920s, when finally the spread of Philadelphia's industrialization reached the broad northeastern section of the county. By this point, Springbrook was feeling a bit old-fashioned too, and the 2 bathrooms seemed decidedly inadequate for the 12 residents and the rest of the staff. The house was sold and then demolished. The grounds were carved up into city blocks, and Philadelphia's inexorable street grids wiped out almost every trace of the estate. The only remnant of the presence of the former farm are the grounds of the Edwin Forrest Elementary School, which still remains and proudly bears his name. But the residents of the Edwin Forrest home, as it was called now, they dropped the decayed actors part, were not forgotten. And after all, the endowment remained and had even grown over the years. So in 1928, its residents were moved to a new building in West Philadelphia at 4849 Parkside Avenue, next to the Bala Golf Club. An Elizabethan-style building with modern kitchens and bathrooms. It had a stone plaque over the front door with the words, "See the players well bestowed," built into the masonry. The massive marble statue of Forrest was transferred to preside over the new entrance hall, along with most of the other artworks and books. In 1949, the bequest for the home received a huge and unexpected boost from the estate of the Philadelphia theatrical producer John Frederick Zimmerman. Thereafter, the 12 lucky residents settled for a fairly comfortable time, all things considered. In 1960, the historian Richard Moody was able to wander freely through the home, interviewing residents and poking about its library. He easily plucked from the shelf many amazing artifacts, from the household account books of Forrest's father to theatrical swords and other props that the actor had used during his long career. And every year, Moody reported, the residents still duly gathered for the required celebrations of Shakespeare's birthday and for America's Independence Day. It was a pretty good deal for all concerned, but by 1988, this home too was getting a bit outdated, and it was judged that the wealth of the bequest could be spread more broadly than to care for just a few people. The Edwin Forrest home was closed and was combined with a Staten Island institution for retired actors. And today, the Lillian Booth Actors Home in Englewood, New Jersey, run by the Actors Fund, still boasts an Edwin Forrest wing. His former house on Broad Street had an even more interesting history. Though doubled in size with an expansion running along Master Street, it served Philadelphia School of Design for Women for many decades. Generations of female artists and sculptors learned their craft in his former dining room and exhibited works in his picture gallery and held graduation ceremonies in his back garden. In 1960, though, the school moved out to become the Moore College of Art and Design. And as North Philadelphia had increasingly become a primary neighborhood for the city's African-American community in the 20th century, it was a welcome development when, in 1968, Edwin Forrest's former house became a real home for theater people once again. It was now the site of the Freedom Theater under the leadership of its two founders, Robert Leslie and John E. Allen. Though this was certainly a development that Edwin Forrest had never anticipated, the Freedom Theater and its school became a leading arts and training institution for the African-American community of Philadelphia. The massive marble statue that Forrest had commissioned of himself as Coriolanus eventually was purchased by another long-standing Philadelphia theatrical institution, the Walnut Street Theater, now a non-profit producing organization inhabiting the building where so many of Forrest's triumphant performances had taken place over the years. The statue was installed by the main staircase to the second floor, and its fierce visage has presided over many an audience and opening night party since then. The Edwin Forrest Society often holds a celebration on his birthday in the lobby, and on occasion afterwards the celebrants make the trek down Walnut to the churchyard of St. Paul's to visit the stone that covers the Forrest family crypt where the actor, his mother, and most of his siblings are interred. No further guests of Edwin Forrest have been laid to rest at West Laurel Hill Cemetery for many years now, but you can visit the lovely site and see the granite monument as the cemetery is open to the public. Most of the remnants of the Edwin Forrest collection of books, manuscripts, paintings, and artifacts went to the Pennsylvania Historical Society, where they are being well curated and preserved, available for perusal by scholars. And the structure on Parkside Avenue, the home of the last Edwin Forrest home for retired actors, is still there. It's actually not far from where I live right now. The stone inscription still marks the front door. "See the players well bestowed," it still proclaims. Which was good advice when Shakespeare first wrote it for Hamlet to say, and it's good advice now. See the players well bestowed. Though Edwin Forrest was a vastly complex character during his lifetime, and certainly we can find much to reproach him about, we can hardly ignore the fact that while he was alive and performing, he lit a fire in the hearts of thousands of audience members for many, many years. This has to count for something. He helped to shape the American theater. Now that he's gone and mostly belongs to the history, such as this one, well, to paraphrase Hamlet again, let's not just use him according to his desert. God's bodkins, man, let's use him much better. Use every man after his desert, and who shall scape whipping? Use him after his own honor and dignity. The less he deserves, the more merit is our bounty. Take him in. I'm Peter Schmitz, and the sound and music are by Christopher Mark Colucci. For extra information about this episode, please visit our website, www.aithpodcast.com. There's a blog post there with lots of images from the life of Edwin Forrest, more insights and explanations, and a bibliography of our sources for this episode. Thanks for coming along on our 3-part exploration of the life of Edwin Forrest. Another adventure in theater history, Philadelphia.